He te whānau, he te kuiama, he te koroma, nau mai, haere mai, whakatau mai. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome. My name is Bruce Plested. I have much pleasure in opening this 27th annual meeting. I can confirm that a quorum of shareholders is present. Before the meeting, I've been asked to convey some matters of housekeeping. In the case of an emergency, please leave by the nearest safe exit as directed by Eden Park staff or security and gather at the assembly point on Remus Avenue. Please do not run. Toilets are located in both the eastern and western pre-function areas. Eden Park is a non-smoking or vaping area. Please be considerate of others. Ensure you observe the usual safe practices. Lastly, please ensure your mobile phone is switched to silent. I would now like to introduce your directors to you. On my left, your right's Don Braid. On my far right is Richard Preble, Kate Parsons and Simon Cotter. Brian Mulgrew sends his apology due to COVID. Before attending to the formal business of the meeting, I'd like to share some of my recent thoughts on the company's past performance, very, very briefly, because we have such a good presentation coming from Don.
No pressure.
The year to March 2022 produced the continuation of 12 years of record profits, with a stunning after-tax profit of $355.4 million, an increase of 90% on the previous year. I think that deserves a clap. We have a level of satisfaction in the major continents in which we operate, including China and Southeast Asia. We're able to take advantage of our global network of over 300 branches to grow and give high-quality supply chain services to much of the world. Our culture continues to define us. In many areas, such as payment of creditors on time, every time, internal promotion and minimal use of casual labour, so that all team members can see themselves as being on a career path, the payment of an annual discretionary bonus, healthy meals, the payment of company tax in the countries in which we operate, and widespread belief that we as individuals and a company are helping to make a better world. We are saddened by the brutal Russian invasion of Ukraine and the loss of friendships and relationships that were contributing to better understanding between people and nations. It is difficult to comprehend that the bloated egos of a few can cause the death of thousands of innocent people and the destruction of billions of dollars of infrastructure. 2022 is only marginally easier to operate in than 2021. There's a fairly wide number of people affected by COVID, Omicron or flu in many of our operations. And that's also true amongst our customers and suppliers. We are indebted to the commitment of our global teams who continue to cope and improve our operational performance under changeable and trying conditions. As you will see from Don's marvellous presentation, we have great confidence in our ability to grow and learn and prosper in the next year and in years ahead. We look forward to our next 100 years. A big thank you to the worldwide Mainfreight family. Fellow shareholders, I will now ask our Group Managing Director, Don Braid, to give his presentation. Thank you, Don.
Can I just say welcome to you all? It means so much to us to have you guys here in person. And I know that we get criticised for not running this on Zoom or WebEx or whatever. However, for us to have you in front of us, to see the emotion, to see the passion that we have, to sit alongside our Mainfreight team, the leadership of the business, I think is really important. And I don't think any Zoom or WebEx meeting will ever replace what we are able to do in this room for you once a year. So for you all, thank you very, very much for turning up. It means a lot to us. So if we can just recount back on the numbers that we've just heard Bruce talk about, our revenue for the financial year ending 31st of March, up 47 odd %, cracked that 5 billion mark. Profit to 489 million and net profit to 355. And I got to say, it was 10,393 passionate Mainfreight people that produced those results on behalf of all of us. And those are the people that require the clap and the acknowledgement. If we want to break down those results into the three core products, remembering we're in domestic transportation, we're in 3PL warehousing, and we're in air and ocean across the world. And as you can see, which is sometimes lost on some analysts that sit in this room today, we've made money in every single one of those divisions. And something which I think we should think about is what we looked like 5 years ago in 2017. In New Zealand, we had revenue of $500 million. Offshore, it was 1.7. Now we've got 1.13 billion in New Zealand, and they keep asking us when the growth in New Zealand's going to stop. Offshore, we're at 4 billion. And then if you think about the profit and the effect of that profit, 69 million in New Zealand, 78 million offshore. This year, or this past year just gone, 136 million and 353 million offshore. And another little stat to think about is that the US business is now our biggest business by profit and by revenue if we count it in Kiwi dollars, which of course your dividends are in Kiwi dollars, so why shouldn't we use Kiwi dollars? But that's something to think about. And if you think about reading Bruce's annual report commentary, he listed all those transport activities that we perform in New Zealand that we don't perform offshore. And that's a process of time, effort, growth, and understanding the market. We have yet to indulge in those transport activities anywhere offshore. So if you're thinking about long-term growth, as some of those analysts in this room should be, that's where the growth will come from. We've just come back from a trip around the US and Europe. The board travelled for their 2-day board meeting around, I don't know how many destinations, probably 20 odd of our operations that we hadn't seen for 3 years. And we're in the US talking to our people, and naturally, I think as Bruce said to one of them who was being a bit bullish about their numbers, and Bruce said, well, but you haven't even scratched the surface. And the immediate reply back was, what do you mean the surface? Scratching it? We haven't even found the surface yet. And it's true. Some of this, and I'm not meaning to poke too much borax at the analyst community, but some of them take it upon themselves to ring our competitors offshore. And they've rung one of our biggest, who we have utmost respect for in the US. And they hadn't even heard about Mainfreight, haven't even heard of who Mainfreight was. Yet in this past year, we've earned 1.5 billion in sales. Think about the long-term growth that will come from that. So how did we achieve these results? You know, there was no secret, really strong economic activity. While none of us could travel around the world, we went to Mitre 10 to buy another letterbox or some paint to paint the kitchen. That all helped us. And that was the case all around the world. Congested supply chains, there was more stock being held in warehouses. That helped our utilisation. We had to go and find more warehouses. Our domestic teams under enormous pressure, moving large volumes of freight across each of the countries that we're in. Yes, inflated shipping and air freight rates assisted the revenue growth and perhaps some of the profits. But our team worked really, really hard to offer solutions for our customers. You know, there were occasions there where our air and ocean team, in one case here in Auckland, being run one night and expecting to have a charter aircraft waiting in Shanghai for PPE gear to be delivered to New Zealand. And they arranged that within 12 hours, paid $500,000 for the booking and then another $500,000 once the wheels were up. And we weren't quite sure if the plane was going to be turned around in time in Shanghai, and if we could put some freight on it to make sure we paid for it to come home. And they did those things all around the world, and that contributed to this profitability. And we shouldn't lose sight that the profitability came from all three core products. So where are we now? We're getting there. We're getting around the world. 25 countries. We've had to close Russia. And we didn't feel good about that. And we still don't feel good about that. And I've got to tell you, we made a decision without the permission of the board. Who cares? But those 26 Russian people earned a bonus. So we paid them the bonus. And to a person, every single one of them want to work for us somewhere else in the world. And if we get a chance, we'll look after them. The red dots are where we're going to next. And there's a bit on to get to some of those destinations. You can see we've intensified the network in Australia, certainly across Europe and Asia, and a little bit in America. And you shouldn't lose sight that here in New Zealand, we're opening more sites, but in the same cities. We've pretty much got ourselves to most of the towns and cities that I think the New Zealand team want us to be in at this point in time. So what's that going to cost? 540 million in CapEx over the next couple of years. 450 million of that in land and buildings, and 90 million in technology and truck leases in Europe and the likes. Mostly the land and building projects will be owned in New Zealand and Australia, and mostly they will be transport facilities. We'll lease most of the warehouses around the world. As one director put to us really succinctly a couple of years ago, a box is a box. It's what we do inside the box that's strategically different for our customers. And that made a lot of sense, whereas our transport facilities are a little more complicated. In total, around the world, we've got 3 land acquisitions underway for this next couple of years, 13 new buildings and 16 new lease facilities across the network. And I think probably as shareholders, you shouldn't lose sight that in the balance sheet, there's over $1 billion in land and buildings. And when we're in a recessionary situation like we are, or likely to be heading towards, owning that land and buildings is of benefit to us as a company and as shareholders. We're not going to wear lease increases on that. We don't owe any money on those land and buildings. So the interest rates don't matter. And as you saw it, the net cash position, I think, was a cheeky $1 million of debt for the year end. So bigger warehouses and more efficient cross docks is what we're looking for. So let's take a look at these. Most of these, and it's of no surprise, we'd visited most of these over the last couple of weeks while we were away, but we thought we'd like to give you a look at what some of these sites look like. And I think those of you who may be travelling to the US or travelling to Europe, and you start seeing Mainfreight on the highways, on the motorways, then you start seeing the buildings. It'll give you a different perspective of what we're trying to achieve around the world. That's Zolbommel. It's probably our biggest at this point in time and one of our best. We walked through that facility, and if they'd served lunch on the floors in every single aisle, we would have eaten it. It was that clean. This is what a cross-dock will look like in the US for us. Long and narrow, all end loading for both pickup and for delivery. It's a third of the size of what we build here in New Zealand and in Australia. And that's some of the efficiency which we have to bring to our buildings and property development down under. They're very efficient. We can't deliver to customers who don't have docks here in New Zealand, but we can, and in Australia, do more end loading and line haul between each other. And I think having been up there with our team visiting our competitors' premises, that company that didn't know anything about us and now ringing us, by the way, in the US, we can see the efficiency that they build into these cross docks. Except you wouldn't have one for Dallas, likely to have 4, and in Chicago, likely to have 3. But they're very efficient. This is our new site in Melbourne, South Dandenong. The team here, sitting here, were there yesterday and nearly completed, or a bit better than that. November finish. On that site, we've built cross-dock and warehousing together. Probably the last time we'll do that. It's inefficient in the long run. We're better to have the warehousing off-site and run a really efficient cross-dock. Hobsonville opens on the 1st of August. I think the team are nearly ready. That's intensifying the network. So if you think about what we've got here in Auckland, there's 20-odd sites, I think, in total. But we've got, in terms of transport, you've got Mainfreight, Daily Freight, Owens and Ken Couriers in South Auckland. But we've got lots of customers in the north and the northwest. So we took the opportunity to buy the land out there, and we've built a really great facility. And we'll run direct line haul from all around New Zealand, bypassing South Auckland into West Auckland, and likewise outbound, so that we are more efficient for the customer, so that we're delivering closer to the customer rather than actually offloading it in South Auckland and then running it all the way out north on PUD vehicles. 40,000 square metre warehouse, our biggest for New Zealand. Construction's underway. That's in Favona, Auckland. And effectively what that'll do is take out 5 temporary warehouses that we've got spread around Auckland for customers, and we'll fill that warehouse with those customers. It's a 5-star energy rated building, does all the stuff that we want to do. We don't own that one. That's a Goodman facility, and we'll lease it off them for the long term. Solar power, water collection, double glazed windows, great air conditioning, great facilities for our people, and recycled concrete for the fill. So meets the 5-star energy rating standard that they set for us these days. We were in Texas, and things are always big in Texas. So we thought we'd take you for a little run through what it looks like inside one of these big warehouses. They weren't bowing to you as shareholders. That was their early start stretching exercise that they do before they start working on the site. But hopefully you can see the size of those sites and how big they are and what it means for us. And, you know, We know that some of our competitors around the world are building them twice the size of that. So we've got a long way to go. Just haven't found the surface yet that we've got to scratch. Sustainability, it's on everyone's lips and it's on our mind as well. We did increase our carbon emissions during the year. We grew the business. It's just a fact of life, and that's going to happen. And unfortunately, if you want us to be a zero emission business as a shareholder, we're not the right business for you to be investing in. The reality, however, is that we are getting far more efficient, carbon efficient, as we move that freight. So we measure that by a number of intensity factors. One of those intensity factors is the emissions generated per tonne of freight moved. And it was interesting, with all the freight that we had, we were able to choose different modes. We were able to get better utilisation of our equipment. And therefore, actually, the carbon emissions generated reduced. So the intensity factor was better. We're doubling our branch solar generation capacity over the next 2 years with some of those builds. And all those major builds will have solar power and water collected off the roofs to drinkable standards. I don't think too many others are doing those sorts of things when they should be. And if you listened to Bruce's speech last year, he was urging businesses in this country to do that everywhere. We count our emissions direct, what we own, what we generate, and indirect. So that's what occurs when we use an aircraft or a truck or a train. So it's indirect and direct. There's a number of businesses around the world putting their hand up saying they'll be at zero by 2050, yet they only want to count the direct emissions. Particular retailers, some here in this country, are busy saying they'll be zero by 2030. They're direct emissions, but they're not counting the ocean freight or the air freight to get the product here. We think that's rubbish. So we're trying really hard to count what emissions we have across the whole supply chain. And that's not easy. But now our customers, if they require, and there's not too many at this point in time, if they want to count the emissions per consignment, they can do. And we can give them that information. So if we think about decarbonisation, some of the stuff we can do is the sort of vehicles that we have. And we're trying with our battery electric vehicles. You would have seen the small PUD vehicles last year that we had here. This year we've got one of our first line haul vehicles parked out the front. At the moment, 5 in New Zealand, 8 in Australia, 2 in Europe, and in the USA. We've got a number on order, but not one of those suppliers can tell us when we will get them. So it's not easy just getting electric trucks. And then, of course, it's technology that's not here really yet. We can't get big kilometres, we can't get big payloads on those vehicles. But we keep trying. And that vehicle that you see downstairs is a line haul vehicle which will run from Auckland to Hamilton, Hamilton to Auckland once a night. Then if we think about what else we could do, hydrogen. The team that we've got sitting here in the room went to see Richardson's in Invercargill a couple of weeks ago to see what they're doing. And what they've done is a combination of fuel, of diesel alongside hydrogen. Quite a cheap way of going about it, as long as you've got somewhere to store the hydrogen and fill them up. So that was interesting for us. The fuel cell in its own right powers an electric motor, but the technology's not here yet, nor is the manufacture of hydrogen around the country for us to fill up as we move around. Biofuels, the country's mandated that fuel companies should be into biofuels. I see they're sending the grain product offshore to Singapore to be converted into a biofuel and then sent back. That's adding up the carbon miles, isn't it? It's a low emission, but it's not a no emission. It won't be the answer. And supply is pretty difficult. And of course, the stuff that we're doing anyway, rail, 13 rail sidings, and if we could convince rail to move their property team a little faster, we'd have more sidings. And of course, we're committed to coastal shipping. So what are the core strategies for the future for this business? Growth, and it'll be organic. We're not interested in buying any other businesses. They come with far too many headaches and it takes too long. Honestly, it does. And in this past year, the number of air and ocean businesses we could have bought around the world, I couldn't count. Of course, the numbers look great because of the air and ocean freight rates, but not for us. It's organic growth, and we're trying to hold on. You get 45% growth, it's like holding on to a racehorse. It's hard to control. Our network expansion is really important to us, the intensification of it, more freight facilities in more regional areas. And internationally, now that we're travelling again, we'll get Jakarta open by August. India, we interviewed our first manager for India in Singapore a couple of weeks ago. Great young man, wants to go back home to live in Mumbai with his parents, and has been in freight for 20 odd years. I don't envy the task, but he's keen, he's up for it. 3 key core products. We're not in courier, we're in freight. We're in transport, warehousing, air and ocean. We're not going to deviate from that course. And of course, the key for us is to convince our customers to use us across all 3 products, and preferably in all the regions that we're in. And that's ongoing. It'll take a long time, but we're getting there, and we're convincing our customers to do that. Quality, for us, it means everything. We've got to do and provide a really good service for our customers. We've got to be useful for our customers. And whilst our people worked their butts off in this last 2 years in this congested freight environment that we were faced with, they did okay, but we know we could have done better. And we'll work really hard over these next couple of years to lift our quality on behalf of our customers. This is why the analyst community are here. It's the only reason they've got interest in us, is what's the short-term prognosis look like? Well, these are the last 16 weeks. So this is from the 1st of April to, last week actually. So revenue's still looking pretty good, up 32.5%. Profitability, up 83%. So we're sort of going okay. If we look at that across the 3 core products, it's not all air and ocean, Andy. Transport's up 51% profit, warehousing up 22%, and air and ocean up 136%. So it's across, again, all 3 products, all regions. We've still got it going on. If we think about the environment that we're in, port congestion and inland transport issues, particularly in the US and Europe, is still really bad. And it'll take time to fix. It's not a short-term fix. There's no short-term resolutions. If we get a reduced peak season, which is really mostly Asia to America volumes, and we don't know if we will, but if it's reduced, that may give time for the ports to unwind themselves and get back on top of it, which will be good for international shipping. In terms of sea freight rates, yes, they've lowered, but don't expect them to be pre-2019 levels for a long time to come. And I think, actually, the decarbonisation of the shipping world is one reason why those freight rates will continue to be elevated. They're having to produce new ships to run on better carbon-friendly fuel, and that comes at a cost. And those shipping lines, by the way, have tasted money and are spending the money, and they're not likely to go back to those lower rates again. The capacity is what keeps the freight rates high, and they'll have to take some ships out while they repower them. So that will mean capacity will be tight for some time to come. In terms of air freight, well, most of those flights are full, and baggage is taking up the belly space that we would like for air freight. We're getting more air freight moved, and the rates are reasonable, but it's still not back to any level of what we would expect. I think the other thing that's changing in supply chain is the security of supply, and we're seeing customers now moving away from China, thinking about Southeast Asia, thinking about Eastern Europe for that matter, for additional manufacturing facilities, so that they're not dependent on one country. They're not dependent on China, who decides to shut the city of Shanghai, and for us not to be able to move freight out of there. So the security of ongoing supply is really important in our customers' minds. What's really good for our people is that when we are speaking with customers, it's a strategic decision. It's being taken by senior management. It's been taken by the board as to what happens in the supply chain. And that helps us be far more competitive and get our wares across to those customers when we're sitting there trying to win their business. So the summary for us, first 16 weeks are okay. I was looking for something from the analysts down the back. Expectation of softening demand. We're not sure about that peak season, as I've already said. Retail stock holdings are at elevated levels, there's no doubt, and we do expect consumer spend to move towards more travel services, the inflationary pressures, fuel, etc. However, we're seeing spending change. Talking to our American international guys, barbecues aren't selling, but wine glasses are selling. And wine glasses aren't going to the homes of people, they're actually going back to the hospitality trade, they're going to the hotels and the restaurants. So you can see people's habits are changing, and particularly in America and particularly in Europe, people are back to pre-COVID activity. And hence, we're just seeing the supply chain change a little bit. You know, that may impact some of our domestic volumes and warehousing inventory. We might have, our customers may have the wrong inventory in the warehouses. But I think with the borders are reopening here in New Zealand on July 31st, in the next couple of days, we'll get an influx of tourists. That's good for Mainfreight. We'll move more beverage, more food, more glasses, more cleaning products for the restaurants, for the hotels. So as the tourism comes back, it's good for our business. So we expect that growth to continue across the regions in all three core products. We're still winning business, new business in every country that we're in. We'll continue to invest in that property infrastructure. I think one of the mistakes we've made in the past is we've got a recession coming, let's shut off any of the building. Let's shut off that CapEx expenditure. Might make the balance sheet look good, but it does no good for us in 5 years' time or 10 years' time. And let us remember, we're building a business here for 100 years. It's the long-term prospects that we should be thinking about, not what the next quarter looks like or the next 6 months. And I think from a recessionary point of view, expect that decentralised approach that we have, 305 branch managers all in control of their P&Ls. They will manage the margins, they will manage those cost levels, and they're in control of that week on week. And that's an advantage to us. And I think it'll keep us in tightly reined and producing good profitability. I think this group of shareholders, people that have an interest in Mainfreight, there's 47 up there on the screen, but there's another 10,332, I think the sum is, who deserve a really good round of applause for their efforts, for the results that we've achieved, but also for what they're going to do for this business, for us as shareholders, for the next 100 years to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that wonderful presentation. There's not an exaggeration or a bit of slippage or anything in the whole thing. It's just Don Braid doing it the way he always does do it. We'll now move on to some of the less exciting parts. Resolutions to be considered today. Each of the resolutions is an ordinary resolution required to be passed by a simple majority, that being more than 50% of the eligible votes cast. The board holds discretionary proxies in respect of the resolutions as shown on the screen behind me. With respect to Resolution 1, re-election of Don Braid, 26,416 shares. Simon Cotter, is he up there?
I hope I've got a few more than that, mate.
Yeah.
56 million.
Oh, here we are, over there. No, those are the those are the board discretionary ones that we have to explain separately. Kate Parsons, 29,561. With respect to Resolution 4, authorising the directors to fix the fees and expenses of the auditors, who are holding 31,556 shares. Your board supports all these resolutions and intends to vote these shares in favour of each resolution. Voting at today's meeting will be by way of poll after all 4 resolutions have been introduced to the meeting. There will be an opportunity to ask questions on or speak to each resolution. I ask that in the interest of fairness, all shareholders attending the meeting, anyone wishing to speak to a resolution, to be concise and considerate to other shareholders who may also wish to ask questions. Please state your name. We'll now proceed. In accordance with the NZX listing rules and the company's constitution, Mr. Don Braid, Mr. Simon Cotter and Kate Parsons retire by rotation and, being eligible, are available for re-election. Resolution 1. The Board of Mainfreight fully supports the re-election of Don Braid. Don has over 44 years' experience in the freight industry, including 28 years with Mainfreight. As Group Managing Director since 2000, Don's led the business through an extraordinary period of growth. His leadership is underpinned by a strong belief in Mainfreight's global competency and capabilities to provide high-quality supply chain solutions for our customers. His visits to our local and overseas operations guide our teams to be sales-focused and always aiming for operational excellence. He is fiercely proud of the Mainfreight culture, seeing this as a key reason customers choose Mainfreight over the competition. Don is not considered by the board to be an indirect director. I won't ask Don to say anything. He'll be available later should you wish to hear from him. Resolution 2, the Board of Mainfreight fully supports the re-election of Simon Cotter. Simon has had a long association with Mainfreight, having served as the company's main advisor for acquisitions, debt structure and other matters since 2003 through Grant Samuel and Associates. Prior to joining Simon joined the that was prior to Simon joining the company in 2013. He's considered by the board to be an independent director. Simon brings strong financial skills and business acumen to the role. He has an in-depth knowledge of the business, which supports wide-ranging discussion at the board table. He is the chair of the board's audit committee and a member of the remuneration committee. I'll now hand over to Simon to say a few words.
Well, I think Don's probably said everything, but looking back from when I was privileged enough to be able to talk to shareholders in 2017, I was reflecting on the growth of the company, and we've gone from 7,000 team members to more than 10,000. We've gone from 2.3 billion turnover to 5.2, and we've gone from 147 million profit before tax to 489 million this year. And I was reflecting on that and just thinking that's absolutely astounding. And when I think about how that's been achieved, there's no doubt in my mind that the culture and fabric of Mainfreight, coupled with a clear vision of the leadership teams around the world, plus good old hard work, has been the catalyst. As the business continues to capture opportunities with network intensification and maintaining quality and service levels, preserving the culture of the company will require some work. Don uses the phrase spinning the flywheel of culture, which I think aptly describes the process. However, the far-reaching ramifications of COVID and supply chain congestion have meant that we have a huge number of team members in the business who've not been able to be properly inducted. So that in itself poses a risk to the preservation of the culture of this company. And as you might expect, the Mainfreight teams, and there's the New Zealand team to my right, are very focused on this topic, even as they navigate unprecedented freight volumes, disruption, COVID, and as Don mentioned, maintaining the quality that we are very proud of. And I think in the context of the last 2 years, the role of the board has been limited other than to provide encouragement. I think the last 2 years have really been a time for management to be at the helm and to be supported as needed. What has been comforting though, and as evidenced by those numbers I referred to at the start, is that Bruce's vision for the strategy of the business has proven to be very robust. And we still have this great opportunity ahead, as Don has alluded to. We've got customers getting exposed to the range of Mainfreight products. We've got the opportunity to sell this product range to our customer base, many of whom still use only one product. So our opportunities to impress people and our customers are still abundant. For me, that's something that's really exciting to be part of, and I personally think we and all the shareholders are very fortunate to have an extremely capable and dynamic management team in each of the countries that we operate to pursue those ambitions. I consider myself well placed to keep assisting the company as it pursues its evolution into a global business, and I'd welcome the opportunity to be re-elected. I may not be from Canterbury, but even so I consider I bring additional support to the financial, strategic, and I was going to say M&A, but that's clearly off the table, capabilities of the board, and I'll continue to give every effort I can to contribute to the success of Mainfreight. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on the resolution for Simon?
Could I ask Simon through you? My name's Alan Best and I'm a proxy holder and shareholder, a keen shareholder I might say. Simon, we noticed that in the annual report there's not a risk assessment or section in the report, and you've drawn attention to that in your presentation. Thanks. Or just wondered if you would see a need for the introduction of further new blood onto the board, because we've got three directors at least who have got really long tenures. If one of them fell over, particularly the one at the mic at the moment, we'd be worried about the governance of the company. How do you see the risks apart from the ones you've already mentioned?
Well, I think there's two questions there. So the first question was on the risk, effectively the risk register of the company, right? Yeah. I think I don't want to be flippant about risk registers, and they've got an important role, but equally I'm not sure too many people would have had COVID on their list in 2016. So I think that's what I mean by it comes down to the management to be able to handle the crisis as it comes to them. On the second question, look, I think we're always looking for the right people for this board. It's a journey, and do you want to nominate yourself?
I'm too old.
Any further questions? We'll now move on to the next resolution. The Board of Mainfreight fully supports the re-election of Kate Parsons. Kate's extensive financial and analytical experience has been acquired both in New Zealand and overseas in a range of industries. She joined Mainfreight's board in 2017 and is considered by the board to be an independent director. Kate's practical and knowledgeable engagement with our team at all levels has supported the company's initiatives to bring more diversity to branch management and leadership roles. Her technical knowledge informs and supports board discussions across a range of topics. I'll now hand over to Kate to say a few words.
Thank you, Bruce. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's 3 years since I last stood for re-election to the board, and what a 3 years it has been. We have witnessed events that would have been hard for most to imagine, let alone foresee. And to risk frameworks, destabilisers such as economic sanctions and war may have been on risk registers of some companies, but as Simon said, I'm sure there were few that had tabled a global pandemic or considered the implications one would have on the world at large. Pressure on health systems, volatility of financial markets, immediate cessation of people mobility, unprecedented control by government over people's movements and activity, separation of families, and of course disrupted supply chains. And now we enter the next stage of these world events, which sees us facing global inflation, a worldwide shortage of talent, and a significant, and some think permanent, change to the ways of working, along with varying predictions of upcoming recessions. Being innovative and responsive in addressing these challenges, along with the environmental and technology disruptions we are already facing, will be key to ensuring our ongoing success. I remember sitting around the board table when COVID was first becoming a reality, hearing firsthand from our team in Europe, Asia, and the Americas of the wave that was hitting. There were many unknowns in terms of what lay ahead for our people and for our business. But what we did know was that we were entering that period of disruption with a highly talented group of people in all our regions around the world, and a deep belief that our Mainfreight culture would ensure our people and our customers were looked after. Our local management teams led by example, empowered their people to make decisions quickly, and seized opportunities as they arose. Never had decentralised management and individual business unit accountability been so important. Our teams were trusted to get on and do what was needed, and they did just that. We learned many things about ourselves and our business during that period. We learned the importance of ensuring our network was full of everyday freight that just kept moving no matter what. We learned that we have built a resilient business model which is somewhat protected by its diversified product offering and geographical spread. We saw how our incredible solution-oriented team provided a service offering that stood out in the market and which opened the door to specialised and time-critical project work. And we saw how every individual Mainfreighter turned up day after day, month after month, dealing with unprecedented volumes, supply chain congestion, lockdowns, and family and health challenges. As a director, I took great comfort in receiving regular updates on how our people were doing and how we as a business were looking after each other and working together to serve our customers and onboard new ones who were looking for more security in their supply chain. Earlier this month, we finally got to travel again as a board to visit our offshore teams and see some of our new facilities and proposed developments. In the 3 years since our last trip, we have continued to invest, build and grow despite the challenges mentioned. Our people have not lost the Mainfreight fire in the belly. If anything, it has grown stronger with an increased belief in what is possible. We have momentum, and the opportunities in our newer regions of Europe, Asia and the Americas are starting to take shape. I am regularly humbled by our people and the efforts they put in every day. I feel extremely privileged to be part of this special company, and if re-elected, will continue to offer support, guidance and energy wherever I can. I will do my best to ensure that board discussions are held in a way that is representative of our diverse group of people, customers and shareholders. I continue to do what I can to motivate the women in our organisation and assure them of the opportunities that come with a career at Mainfreight. I am conscious of the need to improve the diversity of people from whom we ultimately select our branch managers and our executive team members. We will continue to ask why when we don't have acceptable representation at all levels. And we will be sure to take on board the ideas and suggestions of our people on how to be more accessible and inclusive. We have achieved so much, but it also feels like it's just the beginning. I would welcome the opportunity to be part of the journey for another term. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Is there any further discussion on that resolution? No? Okay. The last item on the agenda is to authorise the directors to fix the fees and expenses of the auditor for the ensuing year. Is there any discussion on that resolution? No? Good. We will now vote on the tabled resolutions, which is the reappointment of Simon and Kate and Don. Shareholders who are entitled to vote and proxies who have discretion as to how they vote will have received a proxy voting form prior to the meeting or have been issued with a form when they registered upon arrival at the meeting. If you submitted a proxy prior to the meeting, you do not need to complete another proxy voting form. If you do not have a form, please go to the Computershare desk at the entrance, where their representatives will be able to assist you. That'll be good. After voting, Computershare will come around to collect your proxy voting form in one of their ballot boxes. Please ensure you sign the form before placing your form in the ballot box. General business. We'll attempt to have the votes counted as quickly as possible, and I hope to be able to announce whether the resolutions have been passed before you leave. Otherwise, the results of the poll will be advised by way of a release to the stock exchange tomorrow morning. Are there any other matters shareholders would like to discuss before I declare the meeting closed?
Thank you. Good afternoon, Bruce. Good afternoon, Don and board. Guy King. Question I would like to ask both, or ask Don or Bruce. As you are well aware, there is a lot of controversy over the future of the ports of Auckland. And I ask you, I really wanted to get your take on it because you play a very important role, and only last Saturday when I was cycling across there, out came a huge Mainfreight truck with 2 containers on it. But there is a lot of concern, and there are people, mayors, wanting to move the port to the Firth of Thames to Manukau Harbour, and as a major transport operator, I'd be very interested to hear your views.
I'm not sure that it's entirely appropriate for me to be commenting on our AGM on the port. Do you want to say anything, Don? It's
Look, I think there's some nutty ideas around about where the port should be. You got a whole bunch of people putting their hand up to be a mayor who probably got no idea about transport or logistics. I think most of the countries we travel to, the major cities, all have a port. I think the key is how efficient that port is run, how well it's run, and what infrastructure they use for that port. Here we are wanting to be a country that's reducing our carbon and be more efficient with our transport, yet we want to push the major port of the country to the far north and increase miles run for containers or freight another 160 odd kilometres. So I sort of can't work that out. I think if we have a really efficient port that does the right things for the country, we've got a chance to keep the port here if it's run properly. It might be, I don't know whether this is the right environment or not, but it might be that the council should stop thinking that they can manage commercial enterprises and allow a long-term lease on the land and appoint a commercial operator or sell the port to a commercial operator to do a good job and hold them to account. In the meantime, they've had a change of leadership and they've made some pretty bold decisions which appear to be the right ones to get the port back on track, and that would be good for all of us. I'm not sure if I can be any more clearer than that.
Thank you, Don. No further questions?
Yeah, there is.
Yep. How are you, Coralie?
Last year, I stood here and said how thrilled I was to see you in Russia because of my Russian daughter-in-law. This year, I'm saying I'm so glad you got out. But I've got a tale to tell. Monday, I had a very serendipitous experience. I had an eye-watering bill for a backyard fence that I had no opportunity to negotiate over, and I received it on Sunday afternoon. Monday morning, I went in to pay the account, and I found a huge dividend from Mainfreight there. And for $264.53, I should put Mainfreight over the back fence because it's my gift from you. Thank you.
Thank you,
To
Coralie.
everyone, and to everyone who contributed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I've got a couple of, Alan again, I've got a couple of operational questions for Don. Don mentioned in his report, or one of you did, that you bucked the trend in your installation of hardware in the branches to the cloud, bucked the trend to the cloud. And I wondered why you did that, because in most companies today, they're talking about the cloud as being a really good solution.
Good, that's a question for you, Don. I didn't hear you say it.
Well, we've looked at the options available to us, having our own hardware operating with fail-safe or fail-over facilities in each country with a good communication network. And then we compared that with what it would cost and what the risks were by putting it in the cloud. And at this point in time, we've concluded that we're better to do what we're doing. As with all of our technology, I think you'll find us not at the bleeding edge. And and we'll judge those things very carefully as we develop our network around the world, be it software, hardware, or the freight network. So it doesn't add up for us at this point in time.
Thanks, Don. The second thing was, I just wondered on page 28 why the Australian claims as a percentage are so much higher than the other claims in other countries, like 1% in New Zealand and 1% in USA, and I think about between 8 and 9%, or 9%, nearly 9% in Australia. I'm never reluctant to point the finger at Australia.
They're Aussies, mate.
Yeah.
Taking off one of our customers' ads, sorry. Look, the limited carriers liability claims ownership doesn't exist in Australia. If you're a customer in Australia, everything's owner's risk. So we offer the same claims format that we have here under the law of the land for transport in New Zealand, in Australia, to only some customers. So the stat that you're viewing is not taken across all freight moved, only for those customers that the claims allowance system is offered for. Brian, you're in the audience, you would agree with that? Yep.
Thanks. And my last question is just about the emissions. Last year you did the emissions on a 2021 basis, and if we looked at the sales revenue, that went up about 14.5% in that year, and so did the emissions. We've just gone up in the last year 47%. So do you expect another bad year for emissions for the company?
I don't want to be flippant. You've got all the tough questions getting out today, but if you want this company to grow, we're going to have more emissions. I'm sorry, that's just what we do. We use aircraft fuel, we use shipping fuel, we use truck fuel, we use rail fuel. What we've said is that we have to be more efficient with it, and that's the intensity factor. And across all 5 intensity factors, which I can give you the details of, but I don't think we should bore the audience with, we've improved our performance of less carbon emitted for the freight moved. We can't get around the fact that we're heavily reliant on carbon heavy fuels, and until we find a way to do that better, I'm afraid as we grow, so will our carbon emissions. And again, that's our indirect emissions, not our direct. And as we continue to build more friendly, environmentally friendly buildings, like having solar power and water capture, etc., we'll reduce our direct emissions. And so you should look at both.
Thanks, Don.
Surely we can't finish on questions like that.
Yeah. My name is Mike Gowan. I've been a shareholder in Mainfreight for many years, and a very happy shareholder. Thank you very much for the superb job you've done in looking after my investment and others as well. At our last annual meeting, Richard got up and said that only, or words to the effect that only a madman would sell Mainfreight shares. And there happened to be a bit of a lull at that stage, and he said we should be buying, not selling, and I'm sure we would absolutely agree with those sentiments. They appear to have gone up by $6 today. I've just been advised by my friend here. But my question is, you two guys have done a superb job, but what happens if you're not here? What is there a succession plan for Mainfreight? We're all long-term investors. I'd like to think we'd still be investors in many years to come. So my question relates to the succession plan, should you guys not be here, and what provision is in place, and what could you tell us as shareholders? In case you think this is a unusual or unnecessary question. I was playing golf last year with the late Brian Gaynor, and he'd been at this meeting, and I said what a fantastic meeting it was, what a terrific company they were, and he said that's all very well, they were absolutely correct, but the big question is what happens if those two guys aren't there? So I'd be interested in your views on that. And I do appreciate, of course, Berkshire Hathaway, Charlie Munger, and but Warren Buffett are both north of 90, and you guys have got a bit of horsepower left yet. But I would be interested in your views.
We have an incredibly large number of talented people, people with degrees who've started with us as graduates. Dozens and dozens have worked for us in different countries and in different parts of the business, either the transport or the warehousing or the air and ocean. And we talk about succession all the time. We know that we have a large selection of people for promotion in most areas. We have country managers who are in charge of whole countries, and we propose being here for many more years, but we are conscious of succession all the time, and it's not really appropriate for me to name the names, but we don't know what we would do tomorrow if one of us wasn't here. But we have so many talented people. It's one of the key strengths of the company is how many educated, qualified people that we have working for us. It will not be difficult to find admirable replacements for some of our ageing people.
You're looking at me, mate? I'd love to just add a point to that. In this past 12 months, we've had a number of senior leaders in our business retire for varying reasons, either wanting to come back to New Zealand or back to Australia, or, had reached retirement age. And the cascading effect of those changes where we promoted from within young, capable people to those roles has just been fantastic. And it's given the opportunity for an enormous amount of people within the business to step up to new responsibilities. And so it will be when it comes time for us. And, with all due respect to those that have gone before us, what we've got coming is even more powerful. And I think that's the foundation of succession by promotion from within, which is what we do in this business all the time. And by the way, to remind some of those institutions that are sitting in this room that want to see the directors change every 5 years, it's how we deal with the board of directors as well.
Thank you, Don.
Ross Golson, shareholder. I saw a documentary recently on the rise of e-commerce, and specifically its effects on the logistics industry. Mainly this was to do with America. And one of the key choke points was in the long-haul drivers. And as we look to expand our company in areas where long-haul drivers are needed, what effect is this having, and how are we looking to solve it?
We solve it every day. It is an ongoing problem. It's not so much a problem in New Zealand. We have a owner-driver system, and it dilutes the problem of a number of drivers not being available. Europe is more difficult than the others. We've had more absenteeism there from drivers, which has affected us, but it's really only an operational problem. Yes, there are days when it gets on top of us a bit and you think, oh, God, but mostly we find the drivers, or we find them in a little bit later than we would have wanted to, which is why some of the service over the last 2 years has been not as perfect as we would like, but there are bigger problems in this world than a lack of drivers for Mainfreight. No more questions? Gosh, I don't know how these pop singers get on singing into lights all the time.
No, Bruce. To the shareholders and to Bruce. And Bruce, if I'd ask you to come to the front of the stage, you have the moment, please. I'd like to introduce...
You don't want me to close that?
No, not yet, no. Could you make your way down there? Down here? Yeah, could you make your way to the floor, please? Thank you. Yeah. I'd like to introduce Mark Peterson, the CEO of the NZX, who has attended the meeting today, and Sarah. And Mark, perhaps you might like to say a few words.
Very happy to say a few words, Don, and good afternoon, everybody. I think I'm standing here between you and a sausage roll. I can smell them on the way through, so I will be brief. But I also probably would hazard a guess that nobody in this room realises that that Mainfreight is 26 years listed on the stock exchange this year. And I think also it happens to be Bruce's 80th birthday. So Don and I were talking the other day about what do we do to celebrate, these occasions. And at NZX, in more recent times, we've tried to do something, reasonably unique for listings as they come along, both for companies and for debt issues. And we try to do something that's a little bit different from other markets around the world. So we've got a Pounamu carver who actually comes up with a piece of art for listed entities each time they come to market. And we suddenly realised that this wasn't in place 26 years ago, and for a company a little bit like Mainfreight, it is incredibly well deserved, and we thought it was appropriate to gate crash the AGM and present to the chair this piece of Pounamu. But just before I get on to that, just to remind people a few things. So since June 1996, New Zealanders have witnessed and been able to be a part of the growth and success of a truly remarkable company. Mainfreight's innovation, passion, extraordinary people and dedication has helped propel the company to a global leader in freighting and logistics and an inspiration to many within the business community. I want to take a moment to highlight a few of the successes Mainfreight has had as a listed company, which we shared with them on their anniversary. Since listing, Mainfreight has grown from 830 employees to 10,300, and we had it at 93, Don, employees today. A huge growth. Since expanding, it's also expanded from 41 branches to 305. It used to operate in 2 countries when it was listed, and now it operates in 25 countries. It had a market cap when it listed of $57 million. It's now got a market cap of $7.5 billion. And it didn't need to go to another exchange to achieve that either. And the operating revenue was $130.8 million 26 years ago, and it's now $5.2 billion, as you've seen today. These are, and I know everybody knows, that these are truly outstanding results. What also continues to stand the test of time for Mainfreight team is their unwavering commitment for each other and the community. Whether it's supporting local communities and charitable projects or keeping businesses and people functioning by delivering essential services around the world, Mainfreight is very much at the forefront of this at home. The values and beliefs which have been ingrained into the company culture since the foundations is true testament to Bruce, to Don and to the entire team. The pounamu that we have here and that we present to Bruce today represents Mainfreight's contribution to its people, community and the economy. The detailing of the waka represents a war canoe that could carry 100 warriors and was the pinnacle possession of iwi. And to get the best out of any waka, whether it be speed, capacity or reliability, is dependent on their leadership and their teamwork. At NZX, supporting the success of others is at the heart of what we do. We've been proud to be part of your journey to date and look forward to the future as you continue to focus on ongoing growth and expansion. Katahi te hua. Ka te wā waka ki uta. Translated, that means paddling in unison, the waka will reach land. Congratulations again from the team at NZX on your 26 years. Clearly, a very special company with some outstanding people.
Seeing as Don pulled that stunt on me, I should tell you that 2.5 million shareholders voted against him being.
Yeah, just one institution based here in New Zealand.
Right, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the formalities, and I declare the 27th annual meeting closed. We now invite you to join the directors and some of our Mainfreight team members for refreshments. Thank you very much.